and questions in the chat, if that is possible, because it makes it a lot easier for everybody to gather questions and answers will be obviously live, but to gather questions. So please keep yourself muted. This event is recorded, isn't it? So that you all know. We will start recording, I think, in a minute or even now. And is there anything else that we should say? Perhaps put up the slides with the recommendations. I think we're all. Yeah, Charlene here will help us with the slides, so you won't see us work with the computer much. But again, everything I've just told you. So let's get started. And I will start. My name is Misa, and welcome everybody. I work in the Commission like Seth does, but in a different service. And we'll introduce each other so that you understand what we're doing, who we are, and how come that we ended up working together, which is kind of a first. At least for tourism, it is a first. I work in tourism, so what I do is policy in the sector. We only have one team in the whole Commission that does tourism, as many of you know, because I'm hoping that many of you are our tourism stakeholders interested in data. And we are a small team. I work mostly on digitalization. And that's how I got in touch with Seth, who's from Digit, is it?
Digit. Couple of words in a moment.
In a moment. So Seth is a bit of a techie savvy guy for data, but he's also a bit of a philosopher for data semantics, and it's exactly the kind of skills that we need today. Because what we're talking about today, can you just jump by one slide, please, Charlene? I put there as a title, we're going to talk about speaking tourism, but taking a step back to put this in context. We really are trying to work towards setting up a new data space for tourism. So again, a new data space, meaning the Commission will set up in the future a data space for tourism. This is ongoing. We are in the exploratory phase of this work. And in the very recent transition pathway that we have adopted, DigiGrow has adopted on February 4th, you might all have seen it already. There's several areas for work. 5 of them, I put them right up on this slide. They all have to do with data sharing. Right, and now this was also an invitation you received. This is no news to you, but I put it there just so that you can always have a reference of what we're trying to do with data sharing and tourism, and also because, see, data space is one of those actions that we want to see happening between now and 2030. But to, like, why a data space? There's many Commission communications and documents explaining why a data space, and there's a whole data act, there's a whole data governance act. In one word, what we want at Commission level is to have an internal market for data that works. A data space will catalyze that. You know, it will help us fostering the internal market of data. And what we want to do today is to start working towards that by tackling one of the aspects that we need to tackle to set up a data space, one of the key enablers. There's many. So, but today you're not going to hear about any of the others. You're not going to hear about servers. You're not going to hear about infrastructures. I don't think even APIs, but maybe. What we're going to hear about today is the semantics. So we want to talk about a minimal interoperable layer of semantics that will help us organize data and exchange data, which is a very fancy way of saying that we're going to talk about a common language to speak tourism. And that is why I started by saying, let's try to speak tourism. And that's what we're talking about. This is kind of an important aspect that in the past year, I've noticed has come up several times in our exchanges, but we've never really looked into it. And yet it is important because it's so easy to get confused. So as an example, say after this workshop, Seth and I want to go out for lunch, and I say to Seth, well, you get organized, pick something vegan, and he takes me to a vegetarian restaurant, I would have a miserable experience. And why? Because we never agreed on what vegan was, and this happens all the time. And this is what we don't want it to happen. And this is why we need semantics. We need a common language to speak together. Now, he's more the expert than me, but he's been telling me, he's been explaining to me exactly what goes on behind semantics. Humans can handle complexity, and from my point of view, I think women can handle it better than men in general. But humans can handle complexity and ambiguity. Machines, ambiguity, not so much. And data is exchanged by machines. So what we need to do is to set up a way for machines to communicate in a way that's not ambiguous. And the Commission will work on that. We're working on that, but we're moving a bit slowly. So on the data space, particularly, we're moving much more slowly than some member states. And that's why we're having today the member states explaining what we're doing, because some of them are really advanced. They're doing a lot already. And what we're hoping is going to happen is that they're going to tell us what they did, what the challenges that they had, how they overcame those challenges, if at all. Maybe they haven't. So what the problems are. And also, I'm hoping they're also going to tell us what we can do to help and to support, because that's exactly where we want to end up. 8-10 years from now, we want to end up with a data space, so we need to work together. That was my introduction in a way of why are we talking about semantics within tourism, data within tourism, semantics within data sharing. I hope I put all the concepts together. I think it's very interesting. It's very exciting. And thanks for coming.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Misa, for that wonderful introduction. I hope you can hear me a little bit clearer. So Charlene, I think we can immediately jump to the agenda slide. I come from the SAMIC action, where we indeed, as Misa already referred to that aspect, we try to catalyze the single market of data, but through the specific lens of semantic interoperability. Indeed, as I would say, humans, we can handle ambiguity, machines can't. So over the course of this workshop, we have 4 wonderful data stories of experts from different member states who will, based on, I would say, the cases from the tourism sector, explain where exactly or in what type of context sometimes the boundaries for certain concepts tend to be blurry and can cause issues when aggregating data on a national, regional, or local level. But so I will just very quickly try to touch a word on the scope, because as Misa also mentioned, we are in an exploratory phase. We're not going to deal about infrastructure. We're not going to tackle the legal aspects. This is just a very focused discussion on the semantics. But we have 2 very different, I would say, groups of people on the call. We have, I would say, the classic controlled vocabulary tech people who are experts in thesauri, ontologies, metadata schema, etc. And then on the other hand, of course, we also have the tourism experts. So it's a bit of a kind of a delicate dance that we have to do today together to not frustrate any of those 2 communities. But I think, again, based on the concrete data stories from member states, I think both communities, both the tech people and the business experts, will be able to learn and to share also insights afterwards. So after these 4 case studies, there will be a discussion led by Max Dekker, who is well known to many of you, who is involvement in Dublin Core and W3C. And after that discussion, in which you all will have to be involved, we'll focus on some next steps. So Charlene, if we can just jump to the slide on, I would say, with some general observations on the scope. So today, I would say, if we take a step back, when we look at tourism data, you could say that by and large, there are 3 types of players. There are the data providers as such, from directly the tourism sector. We then have the whole ecosystem of different very big to less big platforms who build services around the data. But today we really are giving the floor to data aggregators from the public sector. And so in a moment, we'll hear from those 4 member states explaining the case studies. And if we then can jump to the next slide, I'll just try to then wrap up the introduction with some notes on why did we decide today to focus on semantics. Well, we all know, I would say, this common problem where everyone agrees that semantics are important, like a toothbrush or underwear. We all use them, but no one wants to use someone else's. So one of, I would say, the problems is a little bit to find the sweet spot between allowing people to continue to use locally defined semantics, but to introduce also a minimum layer of harmonized semantics so that machines can also hold hands to exchange data. Of course, a lot of work has already been done, and especially in the field of semantics, well, we have to stop reinventing the wheel. So today we're not going to start off a new ontology or a new metadata schema. There's loads of existing work which has been developed for more than, I would say, almost 2 decades. So a couple of you might know the project from GROW from about 10 years ago, the Virtual Tourism Observatory. And there's also, I would say, already a legal basis for some of the top of the iceberg semantics, such as accommodation. And I've put a link in the regulation from 2011 on the slides. And we're very happy to have Christophe de Munter from ESTAT, who will, towards the end of the meeting, and he's, I would say, the expert on the regulation, who will listen to the discussion as it will pan out today, and will be able to kind of to put things also shortly into perspective towards the end of the meeting. Of course, the market itself has already developed important initiatives. I think schema.org, of course, is a very strong player who has already, I would say, well-established semantics on the tourism sector, which have been reused, for example, in the project that Pascal Vinot from France will present. There's also, I would say, more kind of a bottom-up approach with Wikidata. So I think the goal of today is also kind of to acknowledge that a lot of work has already taken place. So we don't want to reinvent again things, but the whole question is, how do we navigate a little bit this whole ecosystem of different standards and approaches? Because of course, we need to ensure multilingualism. We all understand that on the level of the web of data, English is, I would say, the key language, but we need to ensure that other languages or smaller languages can also have their place on the web of data. But we all also, many people here on the call who are from the semantics tech field know this. Sometimes the wall that we hit, or let me put it differently, the hole that we fall into when we put 10 experts into a room for 10 years, and then when the ontology is finished, it's of course outdated, so we don't want to go there. So we need to be extremely pragmatic, and in that sense, we really need to focus on use cases for the cross-border exchange of data. And just as a very last word, this is also, I'm just really happy with this collaboration with MISA, but of course, this work also involves the expertise and the help of other DGs from Connect, from ESTAT, from the Publications Office, and from JRC, but we'll touch a word upon that at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
Without any further ado, I think we can start with the fantastic lineup of case studies that we have. And I think the first group that we have is from Flanders. So I'm very happy to hand over the floor to all our colleagues from Flanders. And I guess it's Evelien who will first take the floor.
Yes, thank you, Seth. Thank you, Misa, for the introduction. And as you already outlined in the previous slides, what we want to do is we want to be able to exchange data by using semantics. And why do we need to do that? I think it's a given, but we need to ensure that information can flow between these different information systems. And we call that between the so-called data silos. And we see that these data silos are not a problem of the past, but also of the future as well. Think of shared or combi mobility. It's another example than tourism, but as you can see on the slide, this is a shared car. When I want to travel with it, and also with a tram or a shared bicycle, I want my data to follow me. So this is actually a context in which the boundaries between the public and the private sector are beginning to blur. if I literally have to enter my data in each of those modes, so the tram, the shared bicycle, the shared car, in order to move around, then it's literally a start and stop experience for me. So I do not want that. It is just very important that data starts to flow between these different actors. Like I said, this is not only the case in the mobility sector, but it's also relevant in the tourism sector. So boundaries between public and private sector are beginning to blur, and it's important that the data between these actors can flow. So when you go to the next slide, we see that we already did some work in 2015, to be precise. We invited several stakeholders and set up some workshops where we wanted to tackle this problem of interoperability and semantics. In the first workshop we held, we set up an initial scope of a domain model. As you can see, the stakeholders, they consisted of research organizations, stakeholders from tourism organizations in Flanders, as well as small and mid-sized enterprise that were focusing on delivering ICT products and services to several tourism organizations. So all these stakeholders listed, they listed a wide range of possible aspects for a domain model for tourism. So this is what we did in 2015. And if you go to the next slide, we see, or you can see that we made a distinction during the workshops based on the perceived priority of the aspects on the model for users, and on the other hand, the perceived priority of aspects from the providers of the data. And the end result of this qualitative exercise was aggregated into the figure you can see on the slide on the right, the domain model. And those aspects that were voted highest on made the initial cut into this data model. And we further developed that into in multiple workshops, and the final result you can see here. But this is already a model from 7 years ago, and we see that the requirements might have changed over time, which is, of course, we could expect that. And now an update of the model would be desirable. And I would like to give the floor now to Suzy and Seppe, who will illustrate a case that could benefit from such an updated model. So I give the floor to, I think Suzy will go first with the case.
Thank you, Evelyn. Good morning, everybody. I am Suzy. I work for Tourism Province of Antwerp. In short, we call it TPA. As TPA, we collect a lot of touristic data about our province, data about junctions and roads, accommodations, attractions, but also about accessibility, all kinds of tourism projects, and of course, figures related to all of these subjects. Today, data are indispensable material for modern digital operations. At the same time, the increased importance of data also raises questions like, how is data shared? Who has access to the data? Who is that data used, and how is it used and reused? On the next slide, you see that we as TPA included in our strategic objectives to provide accurate, promotional and up-to-date tourism data to be used as content for marketing, promotion and product development. Therefore, we've been working with the touristic database, TP-Access, since 2012. At this moment, we collect promotional data of about 7,200 tourism products, including 3,900 accommodation units and about 1,630 points of interest. The data is divided into specific data types such as accommodations, points of interest, touristic restaurants, cafes, regional products and producers, cycling routes, hiking routes. Between the data types, we can build relations such as is located at the same address, or is the producer of or works together with. On the next slide, you can see we build an API connection and we import open data files from Tourism Flanders. They provide contact and license data of accommodations, their contact persons, and also accessibility data. We enrich the data with promotional data. We also build a connection with the provincial image database. That connection works in the two directions. On the next slide, With our API, we also offer our data to all kinds of digital application suppliers for building digital applications such as websites, apps. For example, a number of tourist websites, road planners, and soon our GIS application will be fed with our promotional data. The use of the data is cost-free and can be accessed simply by creating a login for TP access. On the next slide, please. When the database was renewed in 2019, the intention was to provide open data exports as well. We wanted to make the data available to everyone without needing a login. The system was built for that purpose, but the implementation of the open data exports was only done for a very small part. We only had an open data model for part of the accommodation data. As a result, the further development of open data exports was never implemented. Now, next slide, please. The data in our databases stop at the border of our city, our province, our country. Tourists don't. They should be able to travel across borders without noticing in any way that they are entering the territory of another data provider. Digital application suppliers should be able to operate without having to do a retranslation for each data source in every different city, region, or country. That's like collaborating with other provinces to jointly make our data available as open data confronts us with the problems of using different data models, different vocabulary, different semantics. We have the same problem in collaborations between regions located in different provinces. Each province has its own way of collecting data, managing it, and making it available. That makes cooperation and marketing and promotion complicated and labor-intensive. For the next slide, I would like to present you to Seppa.
Thank you, Susie. From the province of Antwerp over to the west of Flanders, where Westour is operating, we promote tourism in different regions, and one of which is the Belgian coast. And Susie took the role of the data provider. I will highlight Westour in the role of the data reuser. Next slide, please. Westour makes yearly trend reports for the different regions, and this is a summary of the trend report for the coast region. And in a normal year, these reports give us answers to questions like, how is the tourism sector doing? Are there tendencies in supply and demand that should be followed up more closely, and so on. But of course, as you know, over the last 2 years, unfortunately, the numbers in the trend reports had to give us answers to questions like, how big are the losses for the sector? Where are support measures needed the most? And so on. So these are very important for the sector. And you see here numbers on turnover, on employment in the tourism sector, on the capacity of beds, on arrivals, night stay and day tourists. And on the next slide, you can see a scheme of all the data sources for supply and demand numbers. We reuse historical data from the Flemish government, from the Organization for Youth Tourism, from the federal government, and we also collect data ourselves. We also look into the future, the near future, by analyzing booking data that are provided by us by service providers and umbrella organizations for the private sector. We have the benefit of the Flemish level providing their data in a well-described data standard, as Evelien already pointed out. But of course, that's only one data source, and every organization on this slide and every data set has its own data format and its own terminology. So the challenge here is, how do we make sure we are talking about the same concepts? On the next slide, you see a few of the challenges that we faced. We are talking about different levels of data, for example, of businesses, units, beds. There's also a difference in the words used for the same thing. For example, some organizations talk about nights, others about sleeper nights, others about occupied beds, and so And then there's, for example, also a difference in how an accommodation is licensed and how it wants to be promoted. For example, on the left side, upper left side, you see what is not a hotel. At least it's not licensed at a hotel, but it wants to be promoted as one. On the right side, you see a camper site, which cannot be officially cannot be named as a camping, and so on. The concepts also change over time. So, for example, the building you see was a holiday home, was a private residence, and was a bed and breakfast just over the course of a few years. And so that also gives us challenges as how to interpret the data. And then every type of accommodation also has its own specific things, like, for example, a holiday home where occupied beds or units is often not known, and we talk about occupied nights. So these are just a few of the challenges that we all have to tackle in making these trend reports, and it's, I think, needless to say that a shared data standard that not only humans but also machines can interpret would be a huge benefit and a time saver for us. Next slide, please. So far, I think the story might sound evident for you, and well, it's not a surprise, I guess, but there are still a few challenges to get there. Evelien already showed that we agreed on a shared data standard for Flanders. Now it's time to broaden our scope and talk about the needs again. There's also what we see often a knowledge gap, both within the tourism sector, but also sometimes within IT contractors when you talk about semantics. There's a big difference between big corporate companies and small family businesses, and we want to serve them all, of course. And we want to be up to date with technological solutions, but we also want to make sure that business owners do not have to adapt to changes all the time. Next slide, please. So from our standpoint, we already have the experience of developing a standard, and we want to redo that exercise, but with a broader, more international scope. Semantics are very important in this story for reaching interoperability, but as Misa already said, we want to make it work for the sector. So it's not only semantics, but we have to operate on all levels of interoperability. And personally, and I think my colleagues as well, we are very happy that today we can share our experiences and best practices, and I hope this will lead to new fruitful results. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sepe and Susie and Evelien. Thank you. Sorry for the camera may not be working very well. We're trying to fix the bug. So apologies for that, but I found this so interesting also because I don't know about the rest of the audience, but for me, I'm not a technical person, and I work in, as I said, I'm a tourism expert, but not a data semantics expert. I found it very, very clear. I mean, the challenges are in front of everyone's eyes. And Susie said it very well when she said, we can't stop at borders. We can't waste our time in translations, in misunderstandings. And we need to broaden our scope if we want, again, and once again, a single market for data for tourism to work. So I think this was super clear, and I really appreciated how you highlighted some of the challenges that you bumped into, because I don't think that you're the only ones finding those headaches in your work. Now, the next example is from Finland. Quite a different story, but also a similar story. And I would really invite Finland to step up and tell us all about their Business Finland platform. I hope I said it correctly. Anna-Kaisa, are you there? Are you here with us? Maybe not.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. I can't
Okay.
see you for yes, but yes, there you are. Hi, hello, Anna-Kaisa.
Hello,
Nice
hi. Hi, everybody, and good morning or good afternoon. And thanks very much for this opportunity to present our case, Visit Finland DataHub. My name is Anna-Kaisa Ojala, and I'm from Visit Finland. So we are a national tourism organization in Finland, and we are part of Business Finland organization. But my role here is to lead development of the digital platforms that we offer for Finnish travel industry. And DataHub is our newest baby, so to say. We launched Visit Finland DataHub last August. But let me jump right into it. What is Visit Finland DataHub? I think just recently hearing Susan's presentation, I think we have a pretty similar product here. So Visit Finland DataHub is a database for Finnish travel companies where they can register and then insert the data of the company and the travel services and products. So we have a user interface for travel companies. So they register and then they get to the form that they fill with their data, and then they can save the product data into our database. And here, when I'm saying data, we mean non-bookable data. So pretty much the marketing content, so the product descriptions and pictures and etc. So promotional content is the data that we mean here. We were also, when we started this project, looking into having a inventory, but then that's a very different scale of project. Then we would actually be building a booking platform or inventory management system, and that is not something that we are capable of doing, and that's a huge project and technically very challenging. So this is definitely a non-bookable data database. And then, of course, in DataHub, we have an interface for different digital publishers can retrieve and publish the travel data. So it's an open API. So for third-party players can retrieve and publish the content. Can I get the next slide, please? And this is how DataHub works at the moment. As I said, we have a user interface for travel companies. So they insert their content manually at the moment. And then we store them to our database. And then through our open API, data publishers can retrieve and publish the data. So our content can, of course, be utilized in building different applications to promote Finland as a destination, promote these products, and promote different destinations in Finland. So the publishers that we have at the moment are like regional marketing sites, marketplaces, product catalogs, and marketing campaigns. For instance, we in Visit Finland, we of course do loads of marketing campaigns in different markets. So we can utilize the database to retrieve the different product content into marketing campaigns, for instance. And why did we start this project? We of course recognize the need, as probably all of us know, that this travel product and destination content is needed in loads of different digital channels, because the multi-channel visibility is a key to findability and building demand towards us as Finland as a destination, but of course for different regions and different destinations within Finland. So previously there was loads of different small and local databases where they kept the local product and service data, and then it couldn't be utilized from the same place for different channels. So of course updating that content was very difficult for travel companies as well. They don't want to update this data for different channels for sure. So that's why we wanted to build a nationwide database that is open for all big and small travel companies in Finland. And then, of course, the API for all interested parties to retrieve and publish this data. So that was like the origins why we wanted to build a nationwide database. So there don't have to be loads of different ones in Finland, and there would be a one place also to retrieve this data. Here's the different product types that we have in DataHub. I heard in Susie's presentation that you mentioned you have accommodation also and points of interest. We have also points of interest in under attraction. Then we have experience products, and that is what we have the most in our database at the moment is experience products. Then we have events, rental services, restaurants, shops, and then different venues. So these are the product types we have at the moment. And sort of to describe the data that we have is that, for instance, in accommodation, the product means a hotel or an igloo village. So we don't get the data for all the different room types and pricings and all that. So a product is a hotel as such, or an igloo village as such. So we don't get all the different igloo types and pricing models and all that. So it's a one single product of the accommodation that you offer. And next, I think I have a few examples of the sort of content that we have. Here is a example of a hotel product data table. We do have, I think, 10 or 11 different language options. So if the travel company is aiming for Chinese market or German market, they can insert the content in those languages. But English is the only one that is compulsory. So you need to insert your content in English at least. But then, yeah, 10 other languages are possible to insert as well. So we have pictures and then the description of the product. And then, of course, because we don't have the inventory or booking capabilities, but we, of course, store the links to company's webpage, and then, of course, very important, to the company's booking channel. So when the data gets published in different channels, there's always a way for the user to book the product as well. And then on the right-hand side, there's different other info of the product that we gather: seasonality, opening hours, contact information, coordinates, etc. And the next one, I think, is an experience. Yes, this is an experience product. So it's very, very similar data, also pictures, links, description, seasonalities, etc. But there's a bit of a difference data for experience. For instance, there's duration, group, site, etc. that we don't, of course, gather from accommodation, for instance. And just to give you a quick understanding how we promote this, or how this data is utilized at the moment. So for instance, Helsinki, Visit Finland site. So we, in our own site, we use the database as well to promote the whole Finland as a destination. And then in the next slide, I think I have this is like a commercial application that promotes different areas and the services from different areas. So they are retrieving our data in like a map, location-based application. And then the next one, I think, is from Helsinki. Yes, this is my Helsinki site that promotes only, of course, Helsinki areas and products they offer there. So they utilize the same product content as well. So already we have loads of different channels, so we can offer the same data for different channels. And here I just wanted to highlight that, of course, it's very important that we just don't promote the products. There's always an option to go and to the booking platform, so the company's own booking or online channel.
Kaisa, it's about 3 minutes to go.
Yes. So next we will, as at the moment we have a single products in the database, but we will also start building database for packaged products as well, and then destination content. So at the moment, number one, so we have single product content at the moment, but packages and destination content we will build this year also. So I think our challenge is pretty much the same that in the previous discussion as well, because there's lots of different channels. There's a definite need for the promotional content of travel products and destinations as well. So, but there's at the moment, there's no, to my knowledge, there's not a harmonized travel data model in use in EU level, not even in the Scandinavian level. So it's a challenge for sure. And even in Finland, even though it's a small market, there's over 20 different inventory management systems and booking engines in use in travel sector. And there's no standard data structure between those. So that makes it very, very difficult to different channels to utilize the data. So I definitely agree in the previous speakers that there would be a definite help and need of a standardized data model for travel products, and then destination data for sure as well.
Thanks so much, Anna-Kaisa, for this also very nice conclusions that really puts the finger on what the problem is. And again, I really like, for example, a centralized data hub that I'm sure several member states can identify with or wish they had if they're not working on it. But you are absolutely right. Seppi and Susie, and the Flanders example was all about, we started working in 2015. We need to now update what we're doing. We wish there was a EU vocabulary that we could just rely on, like you just said, and that would open up immense opportunities at single market level, but there isn't one, as far as I'm understanding. And this gives me really the hook to introduce the next speaker, who is Pascal Binot from EDN France. And I'm saying that this is a very good hook because what the French example is all about is a new vocabulary, well, it's a vocabulary, a national vocabulary, which could be very interesting at EU level. So much so that DigiGrow has supported this French schema, this French vocabulary, in translating it into 5 EU languages, and we hope our collaboration can go on. So Pascal, the floor is yours to tell us what is it that you're doing that everyone seems so interested in.
Thank you so much, Seth and Misa, for the invitation. Good morning, everyone. I'm very glad to be with you today to speak about the French Semantic and Open Data project for the tourism industry. My name is Pascal, and I'm a project manager working for DNA Tourism, which is the French Federation of Tourist Offices and local public agencies. The Data Tourism project, so on the next slide, please. Data Tourism project is the official open data platform for collecting the whole inventory of events and points of interest in France. This device is made of several parts. The first one is the Ontology. I will talk about it next. And we also have a platform which has to aggregate, standardize, and then openly disseminate the data from the whole country. And we also have some additional services like automated translation, quality monitor, and also linked data services. This project was first supported and paid by the French government. And then since January, this device is now driven and supported by our federation. As you can see on the picture, we already have many points of interest aggregated all over the country. More than 26 towns are covered, and we can notice that we have more than 15 million downloads each month by developers in order to create digital solutions. On the next slide, we can see the use of this platform. It is available to anyone public or private, who wants to develop digital services, and it is free because it's an open data service. For example, we have many daily press websites using the data, also DMO services, devices, and we can create virtual advisor thanks to IA, completing the services of our agents on strategic locations. You can see some examples on the pictures. On the next slide, I will focus on the importance of the semantic bricks of this project, because this is the matter of today. Our context was that we had no single database in France for tourism data. We have more than 30 official public databases depending on the area, and the data is collected and produced on the field by more than 1,500 tourist offices. So we had an interoperability issue, a big issue, because we had no single format, no single vocabulary, even if we were speaking about the same kind of points of interest. Standardization was very needed. And then when we started to think about this issue, we saw that the existing standards did not cover all the typologies of data we produced in our databases. So we decided to create a complete ontology for tourism industry. And we decided to base it on existing standards first, like schema.org, and to complete it with new concepts when necessary, but only when necessary. Thanks to this French ontology, which is ready since 2018, the national platform is now able to aggregate the data from 33 local bases and able to unify the format in order to enable interoperability. Next slide, please. Let me show you how it works and how the semantic brick allows the unique desk and helps reusers. It's very simple because each public tourist office has to send its data feeds into the national platform thanks to web services. There is an automatic format standardization. We transform the local format into the ontology. And we also have an automatic data enrichment. The first one is translation into several languages. And the second one is a picture edit, because we are linked to wikidata.org in order to get some pictures. Then developers are provided to use a free B2B desk. They can set up feeds and they can download the data for creating their own digital solutions. The next, please. If we focus a minute on the ontology and on attributes and relationship overviews, I can tell you that we have four main classes in order to describe the data. The first one is the event, which is an ephemeral data. The second one is the place, which is the biggest one because we have many kind of places like accommodations, restaurants, shops, museums, castles, points of interest, etc. The third one is the route, the tour, composed of several stopovers. And the last one is the project, which is like activities to be booked. But we don't have booking data on this database. Then we have more than 80 subclasses divided into 4 levels, which can allow us to get very accurate classification, like you can see on these examples. And we also have several dozens of qualifying attributes, like example of featuring or theme. I can see very clearly, but offers, prices, and audience, also many attributes to describe the data. And the many important things is that we have a dictionary with 1,500 words, which can describe universally each point of interest. We can use the same word for describing one point of interest thanks to this ontology. On the next slide, please. Let me speak about our approach. Like you said, Misa, we first built on schema.org and on other standards. The French ontology is being modeled in order to interconnect with the standards and recognized semantic ontologies. We had to create our own ontology because, like I said, schema.org did not cover all types of points of interest we produce. But we paid attention not to create twice any existing concept, property, or relationship. So we tried to ensure the best level of interoperability with other semantic systems. And therefore, we especially strongly linked the ontology to schema.org through the modeling of the point of interest, their location, and their pricing. On the next slide, I can speak about our approach again and say that, like I said, when necessary, we had to complete the schema with additional branches and vocabulary, and this was a very tough work. It took about 18 months to do that. We decided to set up a bottom-up organization because we wanted to have a collaborative project. We created working groups involving all stakeholders, producers, reusers, public and private. And we had first to observe and benchmark each practice in each local database and each existing schema. Then we had to agree on a single vocabulary when necessary. And if we had no consensus, we had to discuss, sometimes to argue, and to decide collectively which class and which word should be considered as official and as a reference. It's very important to say that we were helped by experts of ontology creation. We did not do this by ourselves. These experts guided us and transformed our needs into a technical deliverable, the data tourism ontology. And then today we can update this ontology several times a year. Next slide, please. I will finish with the next steps for us and the challenges. We would like to enrich this ontology and to extend its scope. We are convinced that a point of interest is a universal concept and that it's used by all of us worldwide. The concepts and vocabulary we selected for the French ontology are ready to be shared, and each brick of our project, the ontology, but also the platform, are open source. We know that interoperability will be more efficient if we have a single standard shared between us, and that it is the first required step for sharing our data tomorrow and maybe create a unique desk for tourism offer data. So we propose to define the European standard using our work and also the other projects' work in order to take advantage of the 4 years of work already done concerning the scope of offer inventory. And our idea is first to complete the schema with the needs from other states, also to harmonize or merge our work with the other advanced semantic projects we already heard about. We will probably still focus on the points of interest inventory, which is called data, no booking data, because we think it's the very raw data in the first step. And then we will have to work on languages because thanks to DG Grow, we already benefit several languages. You can see English, German, Spanish, Italian, Dutch, and Portuguese languages had been translated thanks to your help, Misa. and we could probably complete this work. And then we will have to promote it collectively, this European ontology, in order to have many data producer producing the data with this format. And maybe the next steps later would be to have a unique offer catalog and a hub connecting to wider types of data like traffic data, customer data, or social network data. To finish on the last slide, I would say that our idea is really to share our expertise with you and to agree on a semantic common base that will be considered as a reference for describing any point of interest anywhere and reach maximum interoperability between us. Thank you for your attention, and I'm ready to answer your questions if you have some.
Oh, fantastic, Pascal. Thanks a lot. It's really spot on. And I would just, as I mentioned in the chat, we will be implementing the translations to which you refer to that Misa financed, and make them available through vocbench, which is a web-based platform for the management of Thesauri, so that other member states can also reuse that work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And actually, vocbench can then also be used as an engine for text mining purposes, on which we'll expand a little bit later onwards. But I think we have a super tight schedule, so I think we need to rush.
I would just wanted to mention, consider that these slides, the panel speakers have agreed to let you have them. So please don't worry about missing out on details. You're going to be able to access these slides after the workshop.
But I think there was just an interesting question, from Anna Kaiser there. Actually, the translation, is it the human translation or an automated translation? Pascal, just a super short question.
We have automatic translation because the vocabulary has been translated by the Commission. So when we have the field like a hotel, we have the translation into the several languages. So this is a unique translation. And when we are talking about the description, we have sentences, and then this is an automatic translation. We use the API DeepL, which is very powerful, and we are very, very happy to use this API. So this is automatic translation for only the description, the sentences.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for that clarification. So without further ado, I think we can then move on with the cherry on the cake, our colleagues from the Netherlands, the wonderful Touripedia project. So without any further ado, I would like to give the floor to Ipe and Marijn, who are the two people who initiated the project.
Yes. Next, thank you all for this presentation. Next sheet, please. Yes. First fact, in Holland at the moment, we don't have any open tourism data centralized at all. We have some small projects, but they are mostly incomplete and not of any interest. However, this is going to change since we have finance organized for it. Let's go to that area very briefly. In the north of Holland, we suffer from earthquakes as a result of 50 years of gas exploitations. Shell, the organization who did the gas exploitations, has compensated that area with a presence of 100 million just to use for anything what they like. So the government has made a project for that to invest that in tourism. And out of that area of tourism, 2 million is reserved for Touripedia. In this presentation, we will go into the real business case for open data and also the reason why it is so important we do it on a European level. And also we go into the approach we're going to use. Next sheet, please. Let's first introduce ourselves shortly, who we are. We are Bouke, Marijn, and Ipe, and we have temporarily set aside all our personal ambitions just to realizing open data in the Netherlands. So this is the way we are going to do. Have the next sheet, please. We are in the phases of investigations, the approach, and we encourage in discussions with the area, with the tourists, and with also the hotel manager. We discover two main problem areas. The first problem area has to do with the events. It is in the area we are living, there are a lot of cultural small events. And these events are mostly run by volunteers. They have no money for online marketing, large online marketing, and they're using a lot of closed data platforms for presenting and announcing the events. These data platforms, they are not complete at all. And for tourists, it is very difficult to retrieve information about these events because they have to step by in visiting all those data platforms to find information about what's going to happen in that area. But this is a real problem for the events. As a tourist, you will miss very beautiful music concerts and very beautiful organ concerts, since we are an area with about 250 churches, very old churches with a very acoustic sounds. Marijn, do I miss something about this?
Yeah, if I can add something here. The level of secularization in the Netherlands is one of the highest in Europe. So most of our churches are empty at the moment and not being used for their original purpose. So this is why we highlighted these 250 churches, and they're all being used for touristic purposes now, but exploitation is all on a voluntary basis, and no money is going to helping these volunteers out in doing marketing for the events that take place. Maybe that's a good thing to add here.
Yes.
Back to you, Ita.
Okay, next sheet, please. We've also went to a lot of hotel managers and hotel owners in this area and asked them about what they really what their experiences are with managing their hotels and their marketing their hotels. The problem there is that the big tech is milking out really the hotel managers, and a lot of money is going to the big tech and less money is going to the services. As a hotel owner, they have only two options. They can go for provision and advertisement. They cost mainly about 12 to 16% from the hotel price. And they go for flat fee constructions. That is when they pay about 250 euros a year to a local government, and then they promote their hotel on their websites. Those are the two areas what they have for promoting. Looking more in detail to the hotel, we see some facts. At the moment, there's a battle going on between the big tech versus the governments. The governments wants to reduce the power of the big techs. That's fact one. Fact two, in most of hotels, there is hotel software operational. There's software infrastructure available for managing the data. What will happen at the moment when you book a hotel, then when you confirm your booking, at the same moment that information is going to all the other marketing organizations who are connected to the hotel. So the bookings.coms and the Expedias, they receive information that the hotel room is not available anymore. So because these connections, this software is already available, it is easy to get available lodging and easy to get pricing of the hotels. The last thing is that the pricing of hotels is changing. As we have before the time of internet, there was last minute pricing, very important, but the transparency what internet gives us that they are going to do the way up pricing, which means that the closer you get to the date, the higher the price will be. Pricing is based on availability in a certain region. And what the hotel managers are doing, they are looking around to look at the other hotels in their area and to find out what the prices is, and also to making a guess about availability. What will happen when the hotel software is plugged in into the open database with available lodging and the pricing in a certain area. Marijn, do I miss something in this area?
I don't think so. The problem being, of course, to summarize it, is that the commission-based model is not working for small entrepreneurs, so family hotels, but also smaller museums and the likes. And I think we're touching upon that subject in a bit. Another problem is that we don't have a split system for tourism officers or local marketeers and open data sets or data aggregators such as ourselves. So we're running against that problem of a wall, a bit of a wall, when regional marketeers think data operators are going to do marketing as well. But I think, Ipe, you'll touch upon that in a bit.
Yes, the next slide. Our approach. We will start small the next time. We will start with low-hanging fruits, and especially with the events. We leave the hotels availability for the time being because it's dynamic data and it's always complexer than the static data of events. We will focus on the completeness. So we're first going for one region, the province of Groningen, totally making everything complete, because what we discussed with the parties who are going to use open data, they want to use it, but they have to be sure they have to be complete and also actual. And it's often they're lacking that in the open data they are using or trying to use. Then there's another point, what Marijn already mentioned. We have to tackle the problem of having local governments, funded organizations, who now setting up their own closed data environments systems. They see the approach we're taking or the challenge we're taking as as a threat for their own roots. When discussing this already in the forehand with Pascal, she experienced the same problems about 5 years ago in France. So there's hope for us for that. And it's practical. We do a copy paste from the French approach. We already decided that. We take over their approach and also the semantics and also the open source scripts to get fast running. What we expected to be as an outcome for the centralized European initiative, we hoped that there will be on European level a semantic data model. Also, we hope that there will be a cookbook with best practice guidelines and recipes for step plans for regional implementations. And that there will be a moderated open source library with scripts for implementing the regional data hubs. In the end, one centralized hosted open European data hub environment filled with data from all the regional data hubs. This last one is a really important one because this is also the business case for having open data on European level. We have the multinational marketing organizations like Expedia. They only will connect on open data platforms on European level. We already discussed with them. They had very nice initiatives. We want to include events in the confirmation of our bookings, but we will not connect to every country. That's too much. And there's even differences in semantics per country. So we want to connect to only one level on European level and aggregate the data. And the second reason is to be having open data on European level. It's not available on the sheet here because it's lower down. The second reason is that when you make it open, there will be competition between the organizations. And competition will give that the prices towards the hotels and towards the tourist organizations will go down. And also that the services to the tourist will increase. This is the two main things for the business case for having on the European level open data. Marijn, do you have something added to this?
Well, just to summarize, I think it's a very elaborate challenge that we have ahead of us. And I think looking at the examples from Flanders, Finland, and France, it's fantastic that a lot of work has been done already. And what we're seeing, but correct me if I'm wrong, is that usually these systems are split up into two different curators, so to speak, the technical data curators, and the marketeers on one hand. And this is what we're looking for, examples where we can really state that we need to work together and that we need to have two systems in place, one coming from a curator side, the marketeer, on a regional level or a national level, and one is the data aggregator or the data, the technical manager. And that's where we are at the moment. We're just starting out. The province has great confidence in us, but we need to see if we can find a better collaboration with the marketeers on a curation level. We're building the roads, but we need to work together with those organizations putting the road signs in, so to speak. I think that's a nice summary. And I'm just very happy that we're here and that we have that we're in touch now with organizations that are so far at the moment, like France. So that's fantastic.
I absolutely agree. I'm so glad that you guys are here. And honestly, personally, I will bring this slide back home to me and back to the office and back to the tourism team, because I think it really nails what the opportunities that we could untap just by working together at EU level. And I feel fairly confident in saying that we all agree on this, that this is not a controversial conclusion at all.
No.
From the operational point of view, because we're all working towards the same goal. But I really appreciated how you, without no filters, you came in and just told us, look, guys, this commission-based model is not working for the smaller actors. And frankly, the smaller actors are everywhere in Europe. In tourism is made 98% by small, micro, medium enterprises. So we should listen to that. We should see what we can do. So much that I could say, but I think another takeout that a takeaway I'd like to highlight from your presentation is also this governance model that you think is so useful. This way you're getting the tech curators and the tourism experts, marketeers to work together. That's what you just said, Marijn, that I was picking up and writing down, and then apparently is, as we have seen from these case studies, already happening in some regions and countries better than in others, but just as something to leave on the floor here for everybody to bring home. Thanks so much. This was very concrete, very operational for us to bring home, and now to keep being operational, Seth. There's our second part of the workshop where I hope that we can take all of these inputs and transform them into something else.
Yeah. Exactly, Misa. So I think that we had 4 very inspirational presentations, case studies, which raised a lot of topics. So it's the moment to go for the dreaded post-its. Oh no, and even worse, it's virtual. No, I'm joking. But so at this stage, I would like to invite our senior consultant, Max Dekker, to open up the mural discussion. So based on the presentations that we saw, we prepared, I would say, 2 large discussion points, which go back to the key elements which were presented just over the last hour. But perhaps to ping back to one of the challenges I raised in the beginning. So during this event, I think Ipe also mentioned this, or Marijn, we're 2 very different groups of people, the techies and the tourism people. And perhaps we can just first of all start off by trying to understand, or to be quite precise about who is who and what type of role you could all play. So I would like to hand over the floor to Max to guide us through this discussion.
Okay, thank you, Seth. Let's just see from the points that were made also in the presentation. I think that gives us quite a good sort of starting point for the discussion. I heard a lot about openness. I heard a lot about cooperation and consensus building. In many of these presentations, there was about a common model and harmonization. I think we try to capture those also in the work that we're going to do in the next half an hour, 40 minutes on the mural. If you have the mural there, you can see there was a link shared by Florian. If you go there, you can access as a visitor, and then you can have the possibility to move things around. Be careful, because everybody can move things around, so we don't want to lose things that other people have written there. So we're going to do 4 things. I'm going to ask, before we start in a minute, Florian to give you a little introduction into the mural of the basic concepts and how you can move things around and where you can do things. But we want to do 4 things. We want to do, first of all, look at who we are, who you are, where you're from, what your background or affiliation type is. Then we want to go to an exercise where we want to bring on the board some challenges that you see, things that you have encountered when you have done projects in this area, of things that you think you are going to encounter when you do this. Then we're going to look at the third exercise, is what level of centralization is needed, and we're going to look at what can or what could be done on various levels, and by whom. That is something that we want to see also for our future work. Where do we need to concentrate in the future? And at the end, we want to also ask you in the 4th exercise to indicate what role you would want to play in the next steps of the work that we were going to do on these different areas of interest. Florian, can you just give a brief introduction of where to find things on the mural?
Yeah, indeed. So normally I see now 36 people connected and following my screen. So that's great, but we have actually 67 participants so far in WebEx. So if the people that are not connected can use the link shared several times in the chat to connect, that would be great. In the meanwhile, you can also see in the screen, in the shared screen of WebEx, what's happening. Mural is very intuitive. It's basically a collaborative whiteboard. If you can avoid at the moment adapting the left part, I see, yeah, Alex Villera. Voila, okay, that's also a way of doing it. So there are different ways of collaborating. What you will need to know for today is, if you double click on the board, there is as I just did, there is a post-it, that is a sticky note that is created. And from there, you can double click in it and start editing. For example, for typing my name and family name. And from there, if you click outside of the sticky note, you can then drag and drop anywhere the sticky note. You can also change the color on the top left. Another way of using it that will be useful for today is you can select an existing sticky note or object in general and simply use the shortcuts to copy paste it. And finally, how to navigate in Mural is simply by using the scroller to zoom in and out, as I'm doing right now. Or you can also navigate by clicking and maintaining your click on the board and slicing it left, right, or up and down. And finally, another way of zooming in and out is at the bottom right of your screen. You should see a small navigation screen where you can click where you would like to navigate, but also how you would like to zoom in and out of the board. So I think with that, you should be able to participate in all the exercises that we have prepared. So Max, back to you for the first exercise.
Okay, thanks, Florian. I think that should be quite clear. I see there are now 44 online users on the board. So the first thing that we want to do very briefly is we have put, as people are moving around in exercise number 1 already, we have put your names, the names of the people who have registered for the event, and we try to classify them in certain types of people. So You can see in those on the board, you see your name somewhere. Can you look for them? And then you can see on the left-hand side on the board what role we have given you, or what we determined from the information that you provided when you registered, what you are, an aggregator, a data provider, or something like a semantic expert or a private organization. And if you see yourself, then also check whether the name is presented correctly, what the type is that we assign to it, so you can change that to what you think is more appropriate. And of course, if you don't see your name, then you can create a new sticky note, put your name in there and give it the color that you think is mostly reflects what your role and what your background is. Just give people a couple of minutes to also experiment with the I see someone has done is moving a new category up there. That's fine as well. So if you put there what the category is about, then people can move things around. If it's okay with you, you don't have to move it anymore, and we'll just see what is happening. Of course, the board will be open during the whole meeting, so if you haven't had the time now to look at it, you can always come back to it and move it around again, just to see if there is any. I see the activity is slowing down a little bit. I think that most people have already seen where they are.
Max, maybe if people can add their organization, that's also, of course, always useful as well to know, but that's more nice to have.
Okay. Or anything that you think is relevant for your sticky note, just put it there, and don't really matter about keeping things in a row. We'll be able to move things in the right places also afterwards from the team. So just do whatever you think is relevant. If you have a sticky note and you don't know how to get rid of it, then you just leave it there. And then if they're empty, we'll be deleting them afterwards. Yeah. So if people still are doing that, I already want to introduce sort of the second. I don't know if I can. Here, the second one. There is the second exercise is where we are going to ask you to put in issues that you see, that you have encountered, that you are afraid of in this area, things that you really think we need to be aware of. You can see there are already 6 there, so if you just want to read the 6 that are already there, then you should think about if that issue already covers what your issue or your challenge is, then you just put on the right hand side, you have some heart icons, then you put just a heart icon with the thing that's already there. But if there are things that you have not seen in those 6 that we have there, just try and put them. You can drag at the left hand side the icon of the circle, and then put some text in there. Try to be concise, because that's something that we want to also later on want to bring together and to make some classification of things that are the same. So if you have an issue, then provide some information about that. If you can look at them and read them, they're a little small, so you would have to zoom in to that particular part of the sheet. I see people looking at them. I see people creating. I have someone is writing their reality changes every day, which is, of course, is a challenge for tourism information. There is someone who wants to have tailored data schemas for different needs in Europe. How to make semantic norms interoperable is a point, of course, where we need to look at. That's also something I think is covered in the first one, where we have interoperability of terminology between tourist stakeholders, and that also includes, of course, interoperability across the EU. I see added value for service providers to maintain the data, or also how other regions do accumulation. So we're getting, the sheet is getting full. I see if you can reduce the text size if possible. If you have less than, you can reduce the size of the circle, then we have a little bit more space. I see database connected with cycling. There is an issue of access to databases. I see very much hearts around the one of the interoperability of terminology, but also in classification in different ways from different sources, such as accessibility of tourism products. I see business travel for mice. The person who had that, is that a possibility to explain a little bit what mice is? If you, the person who put in the mice travel, can that person speak up, unmute themselves and say what the mice is about?
I can speak up. I will also add it into the bubble. My name is Barbara Weizsäcker. I represent the European Exhibition Industry Alliance, so trade fairs and exhibitions for business to consumer or business to business. And I think in all the exercise, we always notice that the business share of travel is a little bit underrepresented, so we try to highlight it. And as you were already highlighting in some of the examples earlier, that events are very much in your data models. We organize trade fairs and events, and it would be the perfect connection point, you know, to okay. All the other points that were mentioned. So I will be putting the rest of the explanation in the bubble. We don't in fact like the word mice because it sounds like little mice, so mouse, and we are a big industry and we organize big events and we generate a lot of revenue from business travelers. Therefore, we represent specifically the exhibition and trade fair part of mice, but we speak for the entire, let's put it, business events industry. Can also be scientific conferences,
I understand.
Yeah? Okay.
I think in some cases we do not consider business travel part of tourism, but of course they have exactly
the official definition includes business tourism in tourism.
I promise you the Commission does, before Barbara raises a red flag.
Thank you, Misa. Thank you.
And there's a point here that how do you get your product to appear on Google Maps? I think that's also an interesting point that is very relevant. So we have a couple of different kinds of things. We have issues that have to do with, let's say, ontologies, how you define things. Then you have the interoperability of those schemas. I see that there are some business issues, of course. What kind of information about a business do you want to include? How do you get visibility is one action that is there. So I don't know, Florian, if you were also looking at the issues that we're getting on the board and seeing if there's an initial classification of things that you feel are is already possible. So I think it's the models that we're talking about. It's classification that we're talking about. There is the depth of information that people would want to include. There is how to create the visibility. I think the interesting part also is about quality and the reality changes. How do you actually make the continuous update possible using the models and the classifications and the data that is being provided? Tailored schema, so for different kinds of tourism aspects, are there necessary extensions to a basic model? I think that's something that we always see also in other areas. Let's see, for categorization, I see there, I mentioned that. Licensing of media content, I think that's an important part also, how to handle that. First of all, how to describe that licensing, and then how to express that so that it's clear, and also that you know what you can exchange between different providers. Sustainability aspects is something that's more like a business aspect of it. So how do you can provide that information? Reliability and update of the database, that was also the reality thing that was mentioned. See,
granularity and customization is, or the flexibility in general is
yeah, so I said it was
several times
something for different products. You might have slightly different needs, but also for different areas, for different regions, you might have different needs depending on how people work together on the local level. I think that's also a part. I don't know if you are planning to move things around, Florian. No, that would actually also lose your hearts, I think.
Yeah, I try to regroup certain parts, but of course, yeah, sometimes it's also at different levels. Sometimes it's more about the use case behind, like the marketing or making sure it appears on Google Maps, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's more about the interoperability and technical issues behind. All are relevant, but so meaning they are playing at different levels.
Yeah. So I was saying with the model issues, classification issues, data depth and data quality, I think is one area. There are customizations, as you said, for products or for particular regions. There are things about marketing and visibility that we need to take into account. Connecting also other areas. I see connecting smart cities, tourism, and cultural heritage. So that's cross-domain. I think interoperability that we want to look at.
I was also noticing that I really like that aspect of connecting to other sectors. Also, because remember, this exercise is within the idea of building a data space for tourism, and the whole idea of a data space is that it is interoperable to other data spaces, mobility, cultural heritage, environment, for example. So yeah, this is a very important one, I agree.
Yeah. I see open standards, which is something that we need to take into account. Other yeah, I also see sort of a legacy issue there. The issues will be different depending on whether there are already structured or unstructured databases in the country. So that's something that we also have to take into account, that there are already approaches that if we wanted to look at common models and interoperability, then it might be that some people need to adapt two common models, and we come to that also in a minute. I see granularity. Yeah, someone who says, yeah, it's important to identify these issues. So semantics, data modeling, usage, data quality. I think those are all issues that we're going to have to look at. I see here.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. Like today we're talking about semantics, but it doesn't surprise me at all that we opened this Pandora box by which so many more strands of work are related to semantics. We would have to have others and more webinars, which I'm not at all against. But in any case, these are all aspects that we will have to consider as enabling a data space for tourism, certainly. And I think the speakers that we've had today, they're probably now in the background, taking a well-deserved rest, but I'm really hoping that they're getting a lot of LinkedIn connection requests at the moment, because the brilliant part of having these kind of networking events is that they can connect to others and answer some of these questions, perhaps if necessary or not. In any case, this is part of what we're trying to do, get you all connected.
Yeah. And perhaps also just to the participants. So I see that Felipe Santi, who's one of the key drivers behind I would say the tourism schema from schema.org, is also with us. Felipe, would you mind perhaps just share some ideas or thoughts about the different, either the 4 case studies and the challenges which have been mentioned here by member states?
Yeah, sure, Seth, and hi everyone. Very interesting discussion after, I think, as many of you, many years now of looking at this issue and see now the understanding that semantic brings. So I tell a bit the story. We co-created Richard Wallis, and Richard Wallis has deep expertise in semantics in general, and is one of the key people behind the whole schema.org vocabulary. I come from the tourism sector and technology in my case, and we created in 2016 the group for tourism in schema.org, which is free to join, by the way. Is a W3C group. And we started looking at how to improve the schema.org vocabulary in concrete matters. So I think the vocabulary, as heard from Pascal on the French case and some other of you, I think it provides the best, I'd say the best base upon which to drive and to answer the most of these questions. All of them, I think, cannot be answered straight, but many of them, yes. I think the best way to understand the schema.org is where it comes from. It comes really from an initiative from web browser, web crawlers like google.com, but others and Yahoo to counter the initiative, or Facebook. So Facebook came as a structured database with a definite schema, which allow, and this is a typical Facebook feature, to structure anything, such an event. So the whole purpose of schema.org is that Facebook could create, say, an event, say a concert in Paris, okay? Say tomorrow, Thursday evening at some time, and Facebook could give just a precise answer to that. The problem that Google had, search engines had, is that they could not parse the text. So you could read a website and say, tomorrow there will be a concert in our city, etc. But they cannot just say, our city is Paris and this concert is any group, okay? They cannot do that. So that's why behind a website, what schema.org attempts to do is that behind the code, or behind what our human user is reading, is provide the structured data. That structured data is modeling in a very loose way.
Yeah, Felipe, sorry for cutting you off, but I was super happy that you're here, and I think it would be very interesting to see in the months to come how, from our perspective, we could also continue to provide input to the W3C and the schema.org extension. But perhaps we can be in touch also to talk about that later onwards. Well, I just see the time ticking, and I know that Max is also...
No, it's okay. I'd say the key takeaway is that given the history, it can answer many of these questions. That would be the takeaway phrase. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Philippe.
So I see we're sort of petering out on the board here. I just repeating what I said, we have some model issues, we have some classification issues, we have issues related to the data depth and quality. Also there, I heard also there is an issue of what people want to share and under what conditions. I think that's also an issue that we might be looking at. We've seen about the need for customization for products and regions. We have seen issues that have to do with marketing and visibility. And then I see there is the cross area, cross domain interoperability is also an important part. But that is, I see the ones that, and the one that for business travel, I think also has gained a lot of hearts there. So that's also an interesting part to not forget about these professional events.
I was wondering whether we have with us today. We also have two colleagues from Eurostat, and the tourism people know very well that Eurostat has come up recently with a really new innovative project with the business sector, whereby, you know, I'm talking about the big platforms, whereby they can have access to some of their data which they would not normally be able to gather from statistical offices. And so to do that, they must have gone through some of these challenges inevitably. And so I was wondering whether Christoph or Simon wanted to come in and tell us how they did it, because their take is interesting. It was mentioned briefly by you at the opening. They work with official statistics, okay? And we haven't talked about official statistics yet today, but that's also data, that's also information that we can use. But is this, how do we put these two angles together? So I was hoping to get their input as well, if they're listening.
Hi, it's Christoph. Yes, we're listening.
Hi, Christoph. Yes, hi.
Yeah, thanks for, first of all, thanks for setting up the workshop. I mean, the soft observation is that, there's a positive mood and there seems to be a strong willingness to get somewhere. So that's at least a good starting point. That's probably the easy part. The implementation is more difficult. But yeah, we're happy to share a few insights on our work. As you said, official statistics, as it's called, it was a bit the how to say, the elephant in the room this morning. It was not really discussed, which is fine. But there is of course a lot of work that we've been doing together with the statistical authorities in the member states that could be useful as a starting point for this. Often, our aim is to produce data that is comparable across Europe, across countries and regions. So a lot of the standardization work, harmonization work in terms of definitions have already been done. Of course, we cover only a few aspects. We negotiate with 27 countries, so we come to some kind of minimum set that countries find relevant to produce as European statistics. But there's a lot of work that has been done there. And actually, one of the things that worries me in the discussions this morning is, of course, the governance of this kind of projects, because as I said, we are used to discussing things with 27 partners, often also statisticians. So we do have like a common view on things, a common language. Here, the group is of course much more diverse. So it will be a challenge to, how to agree, how to come to consensus. There's probably 100 partners involved. There might be 100 different product types. So if you put this in a matrix, you have 10,000 cells. So we have to do something with that. So it will be a matter of prioritizing, on specific product types that are, let's say, low-hanging fruits. On partners, it's maybe good to have a core or lead group instead of, I mean, and of course to have regular workshops to connect again with the whole group. Another important thing in terms of governance, I think, it's the sustainability, because we can discuss and come to something concrete, but of course maintaining and managing and keeping it alive is an important thing, because what we don't want, I think, is an ad hoc project that gives a fantastic product, but then 2 years later it's outdated and nobody has cared about keeping it up to date. So it should be a project that has like an organic component that basically keeps it alive.
Yeah.
And of course, it should be tangible. And I think the Dutch colleagues mentioned at some point the word cookbook. I always like this word in our own work as well, that it should be hands-on and that we should not get lost in theoretical things. But to come back to what Misa said, as I said, there's a lot of work that we have been doing in terms of finding common definitions across countries. So it would definitely be good to also learn from that. As was mentioned, we actually applied this outside our maybe tunnel vision world of statistics when we talked with the platform. So you may be aware that since a few years we receive data from Airbnb, Booking, TripAdvisor, and Expedia on short-term rentals. So also with these companies, which are then not the type of people that we're used to talk to, also with these companies, we had to align data structure definitions, transmission systems. I mean, basically the way how they load data in our systems. So also there we have some precedent of an example that it can actually work to cooperate and integrate.
Yeah,
this is a bit what I had to share. I don't know if my colleague Simon is here and wants to add something to what I had said, or
like to add that
disagree with something.
with these so the new partners that you hadn't worked before, and it didn't happen from one day to the next, but the quality of the data that you collect is really high, and for everybody, Eurostat works at a very high level of data aggregation. Quality of data in Eurostat is almost academic. It's so good. So you did not, I don't know if that was a challenge, but the end result is certainly up to your standards. I'm mentioning this because someone here on the mural was mentioning quality of data. It is possible then.
Yeah, I mean it's a constant challenge to make sure that all countries work in the same way. I mean, this is basically what keeps us in the job. And as I said, of course, the more diverse the group of partners is, the more challenging this becomes. So that's why I said, I mean, the governance, I mean, who does what, who decides what, who has the last word. That's of course an important one. But I think an important part is basically getting started with probably a very suboptimal and small set of common ground, but that may be a starting point. I mean, this is the kind of project, if we see it too big and we want to have everything there from day one, it's probably not going to happen. It's probably better to start in a modest way and then to continue building once there's a solid common base. And of course, some things will be more harmonized than others, and others will have different quality features.
Okay, so I think that's very good. I think we need to finish this part of the discussion. I think we have a number of things here that we are bringing together. What was just said by Christophe is sort of parallel to that, how to be practical, how to use the low-hanging fruit, and how to solve the governance issue around the work that we want to do together. And therefore, I'd like to know, Florian, about your moving around. I don't think we can actually summarize this completely here. We will do that in the report afterwards. We will publish sort of what we think the classification or what the grouping of these issues is all about. What can you say about that, Florian?
Yeah, fully agree. We'll share that as part of the notes, and then people will be able to contribute still based on that and come back to us.
Yeah, and we can see already with the hearts what kind of things are sort of most popular, and we need to sort of treat that as priorities. I want to go to the third exercise, if that's okay with you. And I see that there already people are contributing that, and I have needed to explain to you a little bit what we wanted there from you. We have sort of two groups of things along the left-hand side. First question that we have is at which level should common data models be harmonized and agreed? And then you have the choice of to have that on the EU level, on the national level, or on an organizational level, for example, a big tech company or some other organization. So if you want to put a heart in any of those three, so for the first row, whether you want to see that work happening on the EU level primarily, or primarily on a national level, or primarily on the organizational level, that would be the first question. The second question is on the two rows below that, where we want to know whether you think there should be a soft intervention, so a publication of a data model with some guidelines that you can apply, or on the bottom line that there is sort of a more stricter thing when, for example, there is a central hub where people need to or can provide information. And the question is, do you think it should be soft or harder? And if one of those two, who would be doing that? Would that be the EU? Would that be on the national level? Or would that be on the organizational level? So put your hearts there. So one heart in the first row and one heart in either of the two bottom rows, so that we can see how people think that the EU could help, for example, or whether the EU is as I see developing here, primarily supporting the building of a common data model with the community of stakeholders. There are some people who say that there's national, if there's any point that you want to make to explain what you are, what are you liking here, you can do that in the chat and then say some more information about what you think should be done and how it should be done, because that's something that also afterwards we're going to try and propose which kinds of in what way we can do that. We have, as we heard from schema.org, we have heard from Eurostat, there are already things there that need to be incorporated, but we're really looking here at, in this collective environment, how can we do that, where can we do that, and then we will propose some way of addressing those issues in practice. So there are questions also in the chat to the presenters still. So if you have more questions, then you can do that. And then please continue doing your hearts into the exercise number 3. If you have that, then, well, we have another 5 minutes, and we will also wanted to go to exercise number 4, which is basically a call for action. You can see that in exercise 4, there are 4 kinds of things that you might want to do. Provide expertise and input for a common model, bring in the information of what you already have nationally or globally. Might you want to participate in a pilot, provide data for a pilot, or just to be kept informed? And what we want you to do, and I think people are already doing that, to use one of those colored circles and put them next to your name. So you might, I see people have already done that. Some people actually want to do more than one thing, and that would be good. So we will also know if our proposals, who we might want to include in building proposals. If you are interested in building a model or just mostly building, interested in providing data, then we can see that, and then we can come back to you with specific questions and specific proposals.
Max, yes. Can I, as a way of also wrapping this up,
Yeah.
while this exercise is going on, because it's super helpful, as you just said, may I just give a bit of a context on what we're going to do for tourism and the data space, just so that people understand that, well, people understand a bit better what we're going to do in the months to come, which involves what we discussed today. We really want to, well, at commission level in tourism, what we really want is to see some actions. So we have identified some priority areas for work. Now we want to see it implemented. I want to do that with the stakeholders. So in the months to come, keep your eyes out. I'll do the best I can to inform you all, obviously, but we will set up a platform. And this platform is going to be open to all stakeholders, any kind of stakeholders, public, private, big or small, not just to gather your input, but also to structure a bit our collaboration through expert groups, through projects, through the exchange of good practices, and in a way that we can facilitate your networking and peer learning when and if it is necessary. You'll tell us that. So I don't have any more details at the moment, but this platform will become the way we work with the tourism sector in the future, hopefully already this year up and running. That's one thing I wanted to say, which is more operational and within which this work that we've done today will fall. Because remember, we have every intention of setting up a EU data space for tourism. It won't just be done with the tourism sector, also with the colleagues in more knowledgeable than us in technology, so Digit and Connect, and other services of the Commission. Eurostat spoke today, but there'll be others. That's one thing I wanted to say. And the last was just to wrap it up, and for me and for you as well, I think and the exercise, the third exercise that you mentioned just now, Max, really pointed in the same direction that I was thinking about in my conclusions. It does sound like there's a big interest for the EU to step in and do something at EU level that can really benefit the sector. And what I picked up has been 4 main benefits of acting at EU level on semantics, which really are to avoid fragmentation in data collection. First and foremost, that was the easiest, the most obvious, and therefore also second benefit, avoid this not understanding each other when machines have to work hand in hand and share information. But also working, and I'm grateful to the Dutch for this as well, working at EU level really would allow small companies to scale up on the internal market. This is where our interest really lies in. Remember, I work at DigiGrow, we work for enterprises and small companies and for the internal market. So not a brainer. And last but not least, I think, what was the Ipe told me, right? Make sure that you act at EU level, because if you have an internal market, then you have healthy competition. And if you have healthy competitions, consumers will get all the benefits. These are my conclusions on a very broad way, but I'll be waiting for the notes from this seminar, to be honest, that I can bring back to my team and then forward in the months to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Soon, and enjoy your lunch.
Okay. Bye-bye, and we'll be in touch.
Everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Alan. Tot ziens. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.